Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more rifle testing, and today we've definitely got a very interesting combo out here to kind of give a little bit of a comparison to. It's a very old school rifle with some ammo that you really don't see all that much, or at least not in my area without having to track it down online and order it. So we're going to put it to the test and kind of get an idea on what this old rifle might still be capable of with this particular ammunition. But as for the setup I've got today, I brought out this guy. This is a 1907 British Lee Enfield that's stamped as an SHTLE Mark I triple star. I'm not an expert on what all the different markings and stars and stamps and everything else, but this one's got a ton of them up here on the side of the receiver, and even on this side there's even more of them there, right where the barrel meets the receiver. But it has absolutely been butchered. Yes, it's definitely an old rifle. It's an old Enfield, but this thing has been sporterized. Probably the worst that I've ever seen one. Looks like somebody hacked it off with a sawzall and just did not do a good job refinishing it or anything. Even down here with the little medallion, you can't even read anything that was ever on here in the first place. It is not a pretty rifle, and it's a pretty loose rifle as far as chamber goes and stuff like that as well. The rifling in the center part of the barrel looks pretty good, but down here at the end is not anything all that great. It's pretty much a smooth bore right here at the tip. So she's pretty beat and pretty ugly, but it seems to shoot halfway decent for what it is still. So I'm going to use it on occasion just to have fun with it, maybe deer hunt with it or whatever, but definitely a pretty interesting old school rifle here today. But as for the ammo we're going to run through it today, I managed to come across some PPU 303 British. So I've got some 150 grain soft points and maybe a little bit older of a box, but these are 180 grain soft points. Even though they're a little bit different box, they're the same ammunition, just we've got a 150 and a 180. The 150 is claiming 2690 feet per second. Meanwhile, the 180 is 2460. So I figured since we've got two soft points out here that we could potentially deer hunt with at some point, depending on how they do, we'll kind of put the two of them side by side and see which PPU load this rifle would prefer more. So far, it's tended to like 180 grainers when I fired those through it. So we'll see if that trend continues here. But as for today's test, we're going to do it a little bit different than our regular rifle test. I'm only going to have the target set up at 50 yards, and we'll put the two side by side, a 5-shot group with one and another 5-shot group with the other. I want to get you guys the best accuracy that I can, and with my eyesight combined with those very rudimentary iron sights, 100 yards just wouldn't really do it justice. I could hit a steel plate with it at 100, but as far as actually trying to be precise, it's really not going to happen. So I figured 50 yards is a good compromise, and for my eyesight, which is very much so average, that's a pretty decent little hunting distance for this setup as well. And of course, all the shots will be through the chronograph so we can get our velocities. But let's get you guys a view of that 50-yard target, shoot our groups, and see what kind of accuracy we're capable of with 150s and 180 grainers of this PPU stuff. Alright, so let's run through our chronograph numbers real quick before we look at our targets. So we'll start with the 150 grainers. Their claim was 2690, and we did not quite see that, but that does not surprise me out of my very worn out barrel. But for a high, we had 2579. For a low, we had 2536. That gave us an average of 2558 with an extreme spread of 43 and a standard deviation of 18. So with an average of 2558 from the 150 grainers, here is your energy numbers and stuff so you can see what we're pushing. But we're 140-ish feet per second under their claim. Again, that does not surprise me. This barrel is very worn out, but still mid to upper 2500s is more than enough for a deer hunt, that's for sure. So now we'll move over to our 180 grainers. Boss claim for those was 2460, and again, we did not see that. I think we were probably 140-ish feet per second under their claim again, but we had a high of 2317, a low of 2293 with an average at 2307, an extreme spread of 24, and a standard deviation of 8. So with an average at 2307, that's 153 feet per second under their claim. Nothing surprising, again, very consistent with what we saw in the first one. And again, here's your energy numbers for the 180 grainers at 2307. Still more than good enough for a deer hunt scenario, that's for sure. So now let's go over and check out our targets and see how they actually performed as far as accuracy goes. Alright, so now let's take a peek at our targets here and see what we got as far as accuracy goes. And I gotta say, I'm pretty happy and pretty impressed so far. That rifle, for being absolutely as worn out as it is, I mean, I'm serious. The last quarter inch or so of that barrel has no rifling left in it at all. So the fact that it shoots this good still is rather surprising. But a few things to note beforehand. Yes, I know 50 yards is not, a scientific test or anything like that, along with only shooting 5 shots for each group. But I only have so much of that ammo, and I kind of got to work with what I do have. And again, with my eyesight and those sights, 50 yards is a good deer hunting distance, and deer hunting and target shooting occasionally is what I'd use that for. So I'm perfectly fine with that overall. We can still get a good idea of what we're working with here. And I did let the rifle cool down between shooting each group for about 5 minutes or so. So barrel heat should not have really been a factor in today's test either. Either way, we'll start with the left hand target, which was our 150 grainers. We had 4 bullet holes all right here in a line, and yes, this guy right over here on the right is 2 bullet holes pretty much in the same spot there, but apparently I did pull one flyer down low. That's a little bit unfortunate because we had a really nice group going there, but I'll measure it with and without the flyer so that way you guys can see both numbers, because really there's no complaints from me as far as that goes. So with the flyer, it's 2.86 inches, not bad, but without the flyer, it's 1.17. So if you want to call that a 1-inch group or so at 50 yards with that rifle, those sights, my eyesight and so on, that's deer slayer all day long. 150 grainers from a 303, nothing to argue with there, especially from that rifle. So now let's move over to the right-hand target, which is our 180 grainers, and to my surprise, they grouped a little bit higher. Either way, yet again, we kind of see the same pattern. We see 4 bullet holes all right here, and yes, this top one right here I believe has 2 bullet holes in the pretty much exact same hole. We had that one little straggler down here at the bottom, again probably me, but I'll give you guys the measurements for both because again 180 grainers performed very nicely. So with that little flyer, it's 1.89 inches, and without that one little flyer, our top 4 bullet holes are 0.78, so roughly 3/4 of an inch for this top little spread there. I'm liking it for sure. And it seems like, once again, both perform very well. Nothing I would complain about. Very capable in the deer woods or something, but it seems to maybe prefer the 180 grainers just a little bit. Maybe that could have to do with having a little bit more meat on the bullet to grab what rifling is left. I don't know, but definitely some pretty interesting results. And so far, that might be some of the best accuracy we've seen from that rifle. It's only at 50 yards, but still, if you want to do the math, in a perfect scenario, a 3/4 inch group at 50 is going to turn into a 1.5 at 100, and I think that's probably about as good as what these rifles really shot most of the time from the factory anyway. So I'm liking it. No real complaints from me on that one. I'll take that all day long. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about those results right there? Definitely some pretty nice groups, all things considered. I can't stress enough how worn out and beat that rifle is, but I mean, if we're shooting at 50-60 yards on targets or for deer or something, and getting between a 1 and a 2-inch group like that with 150 or 180s, I mean, there's really nothing to complain about there. There's only so good that these rifles shot from the factory regardless, and with as many stamps and everything else that's on that particular rifle, who knows, it could have been a factory unicorn back in the day that kept getting repurposed over and over and over again. I have no idea, but with as worn out as it is to shoot those kinds of groups, I'm not complaining one bit. So now comes the question, do we try and deer hunt with it? Clearly it is plenty capable of getting the job done, no doubt about it, and it would be pretty fun early season doe hunting or something like that where you can still get one in right up close and personal, 30-40 yards all day long. You could absolutely hammer some deer with that. So I'd say I'm pretty happy with the results overall, but leave your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Do you have an old Enfield or a 303 in general and have tried any of the PPU 150s or 180s? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? Have you hunted with any of these PPU soft points? And if so, what kind of performance on game do they actually have? And is this a combination that you would ever hunt with? And which bullet weight would you personally use? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.